Imagine a millionaire who is about to become the richest man in the world turning to absolute zero. What might be the reason? From the top 10 richest people on earth to sharing a prison cell with $0 in his bank. In this video, we're going to see the dramatic fall of German entrepreneur Mr. Batista's empire. Get ready, as this story is wilder than a roller coaster. Ike was the second child out of 7 children, born on the 3rd of November 1956 in Brazil, Germany. His father, Eike Batista, was Minister of Mines and Energy in the João Goulart and Fernando Collor administrations and a former president of Vale, then wholly a state enterprise between 1961 to 1964 and 1979 to 1986. His mother, Jutta Forken, was born in Germany. Ike says that he had learned self-esteem and discipline from her, which contributed to his formation as an entrepreneur. After spending his childhood in Brazil, Batista and his family moved to Europe when he was a teenager, due to his father's occupation. They lived in Genova, Dusseldorf, and Brussels. After spending his early childhood in Brazil, Batista gained his secondary education in Europe. In the 1970s, he studied metallurgy at the Rheinische Westphalian in Aachen, Germany. Later, he decided to become a uni dropout. He remained abroad and began selling insurance policies door to door to make his living. He magnifies that stress and the lessons he learned were essential for his education. Here's an interesting fact. In Germany, there will be a special prison cell for those who are degree holders, and there will be a normal 6-man prison cell for those who do not have any degree. He married Luma de Oliveira, a model, in 1994 and had 2 children, Olin and Thor. They later divorced in 2004. Meanwhile, Batista dated businesswoman and lawyer Flavia Sampaio for several years, with whom he had a 3rd son in 2013 named Balder. Batista enjoys running, swimming, and practicing marine sports. In the 90s, he was the Brazilian, US, and world champion in the super offshore powerboat class. In 2006, he beat the record for the course in his boat, the Spirit of Brazil. Batista maintains an active digital life with a personal site with articles, videos, and news about his companies. The digital channel that Batista has chosen as his primary means of personal communication is Twitter. In 2011, Batista released the book The Heart of the Matter, which recounts his trajectory in the business world and offers tips on entrepreneurialism. In 2011, Batista was listed by Forbes magazine as the 8th richest person in the world and the richest person in Brazil. His wealth was at one time estimated at $30 billion. At the end of 2010, the magazine ranked Batista as the 58th most powerful person in the world. According to the Brazilian weekly magazine Época, Batista was one of the 100 most influential men in Brazil in 2010. Since the 1980s, Batista created and put into operation 8 gold mines in Brazil and Canada, a silver mine in Chile, and 3 iron ore mines in Brazil. All of Batista's companies were named with 3-letter combinations ending in the letter X, which Batista believed was a symbol for the multiplication of wealth. From 2004 to 2010, Batista created and put into operation 5 companies: MMX for mining, MPX for energy, OGX for petroleum products, LLX for logistics, and OSX related to the offshore industry. As of 2013, due to falling commodity prices, none of his enterprises were profitable, despite substantial infusions of cash by the Brazilian government. And Batista was engaged in desperate efforts to shed assets and meet the demands of creditors. Now we're going to see the detailed structure of every company and its motto of profit. Make sure to like this video, by the way. Number 1. EBX. The EBX group produces iron ore in Minas and has put the first commercial-scale solar power plant into operation in Brazil. It invested an estimated $15.5 billion between 2011 and 2012 in Brazil and is responsible for projects of significant scales, such as the LLX Açu Superport in São João and the MPX thermal power plants in Itacol. These important energy and infrastructure projects are being executed in parallel to OGX's exploratory campaigns in Campos dos Goitacazes, Rio de Janeiro, which have resulted in oil and gas discoveries. 20,000 people were working in the construction and operation of the group's projects in 2011. The EBX Group is headquartered in Rio de Janeiro and operates in 9 Brazilian states. It has offices in New York City, SA, Colombia, and Chile. In addition to the infrastructure and natural resources sectors, Batista's EBX Group also invests in real estate, entertainment, technology, and catering. In Rio de Janeiro, EBX is developing sports, hospitality, and beauty initiatives. Since the early 2000s, however, Batista has focused primarily on natural resources, energy, and infrastructure. In April 2012, the EBX Group contracted International Business Machines Corporation to outsource EBX's IT operations. Number 2. MMX. MMX is the mining company of the EBX Group, with integrated logistics at low production cost. The company has projects in the Brazilian states of Minas Gerais as well as in Chile. MMX is the mining company of the EBX Group founded in 2005. It's engaged in the extraction, beneficiation, and sale of iron ore and minerals in Brazil and Chile. MMX declared having the capacity to produce 10.8 million tons per year of iron ore in 2013. The company plans to invest in the expansion of the total installed capacity to reach an output of up to 40 million tons per year of iron ore. The company operates through 2 systems in Brazil. It's the Sistema Sudeste, Sistema Corumba, and Chile. In February 2011, MMX acquired the right to explore for 30 years the Pau de Vinho mine, which is owned by Uzi Minas. The mine is located in an area adjacent to Blue Mountain Drive, which optimizes its operation. Early studies show that Pau de Vinho mine can add more than 8 million tons of iron ore per year to the production of MMX in the region. The iron ore produced at Serra Azul is sold to customers in Brazil and abroad. Currently, the flow of production to the foreign market is done by rail to the port of the CSN, located in Itaguai. Since 2013, the MMX's Super Porto Sudeste is a newer asset of the company to export iron ore. The MMX also has the Sistema Corumba in Mato Grosso do Sul, in operation since 2005, whose annual production capacity is 2.1 million tons. Part of the production of Corumba is drained by the Paraguay River to the port of Campana, Argentina, where iron ore is shipped to foreign customers, especially Argentina and European countries. The other part is transported by truck to domestic steel mills. In Chile, MMX operates through its subsidiary Minera MMX de Chile, which holds mining rights for the extraction of iron in the region of the Atacama Desert. The project was undertaking geological surveys. MMX is expected to be producing 10 million tons of iron ore per year by 2016. The Chilean subsidiary was sold to Inversiones Copper Mining in 2013. The company filed for bankruptcy in 2016, and it's part of the current investigation of fraud and money laundering linked to its owner, Eike Batista. Number 3. Innova SA. Innova's former name, MPX Energia SA, is a power generation company based in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It's listed at the São Paulo Exchange. Innova was founded in 2001 as MPX Energia. In January 2012, German energy utility E.ON agreed to buy a 10% stake in MPX for $350 million. Innova and E.ON also agreed to create an equally owned joint venture. Innova will transfer its 11 power projects with licenses for 11,000 megawatts of generating capacity into the joint venture. In March 2013, it was agreed that E.ON would increase its stake to 36.2%. In March 2020, Innova extended a $1.5 billion merger proposal to Brazilian energy company AES Tietê. Innova is developing a thermal power plant in Ceará, Brazil, in partnership with MD Resources Group. MPX has also proposed the 720 megawatt coal-fired Sul power plant and 600 megawatt coal-fired Sivo power plant natural gas-fired expansion. In Chile, the company planned to build the 2100 megawatt Castilla coal-fired power plant. The plan was approved by the Chilean environmental authorities. However, the proposal was annulled by the appeals court of Antofagasta. Aniva has coal mining rights in Colombia and a 70% stake in the Cevado coal mine in southern Brazil. Through MPX Colombia, it developed the Canaverales coal mine in northern Colombia. The mining complex was expected to become operational by 2014. However, financial pressures forced Eike Batista to sell the project to Yildirim Holdings AS of Turkey for some $450 million. In addition to the terminal, a 150-kilometer railroad was to be built from the coal mine to the terminal. MPX had announced the spin-off of its coal mining assets in Colombia to form a new company, called Colombian Coal CCX, listed on the Sao Paulo Stock Exchange. Number 4. OGX. OGX was the EBX Group company that carried out activities in the exploration and production of oil and natural gas. The company was responsible for the largest private sector exploratory campaign underway in Brazil, claiming an early success rate in exploratory wells of more than 90%, and initially valuing its deposits at more than $1 trillion. The company's wells turned out to be duds, however, and OGX filed for bankruptcy protection on the 3rd of October 2013. In December 2013, its shareholders voted to rename the company known as OGPAR. Brazilian tycoon Eike Batista's oil company OGX Petróleo e Gás Participações S.A. agreed on Thursday to sell its 67% stake in its natural gas unit for $156 million, the day after it filed for bankruptcy protection. OGX needs new capital to avoid losing its rights to its exploration areas and existing fields, its principal assets. While bankruptcy proceedings will not automatically result in their loss, Brazil's oil regulator has warned OGX that it must meet all its contractual agreements with the government, including making investments or risk losing its oil rights. The bankruptcy filing came after OGX spent about 10 billion reais exploring offshore fields that failed to deliver on output expectations, the company said in court documents. It is scrambling, though, to hook up a second offshore field, Tubarão Martelo, by the end of November. Number 5. LLX. LLX was the logistics company of the EBX Group, responsible for building the ACU Superport in the state of Rio de Janeiro, projected to be the largest port industrial complex in Latin America. As of the 11th of December 2013, LLX was renamed Prumo Logistica Global by its new controlling parent, U.S.-based EIG Group. Batista planned to repurchase up to 100% of outstanding stock in logistics company LLX Logistica S.A., according to a regulatory filing on Monday. Batista intended to delist the company from Brazil's Bovespa Stock Exchange with the buyback, set at a maximum price of 3.13 reais per share, according to the filing. LLX shares closed on Friday at 2.85 reais per share. Number 6. OSX. OSX operates in the offshore shipbuilding industry and is constructing the largest shipyard in the Americas, the Embraer of the Sea, at the ACU Superport. It has different segments: shipbuilding, the charter of exploration and production of equipment, and operation and maintenance. Shipbuilding firm OSX, part of the EBX Group, Brazil, made the filing in Rio de Janeiro in November 2013 court less than 2 weeks after its sister oil company, OGX, also declared bankruptcy. OSX became the second company controlled by former billionaire Eike Batista to seek court protection from creditors in just over a week. However, there is some risk involved, as the newspaper Folha de São Paulo is also reporting that OSX recently defaulted on a 500 million reais, $221 million USD payment due to Spain's Acciona Infrastructures, which is in charge of building OSX's pier berthing in the ACU Superport, the largest port infrastructure investment in Latin America, and a subsidiary of Batista's logistics company LLX. To make things even worse, 3 members of Batista's oil and gas company OGX left its board as the company battled increasing debt and missed corporate goals. The move came amid multiple setbacks after Batista sold off 70.4 million company shares for a reported $57 million in what some analysts called a desperate attempt to free up cash for operations. It took 30 years for Batista to reach the top of Brazil's corporate world, but his downfall was much quicker. Eike Batista on stage with former Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff, who herself was later impeached and separately faced charges of corruption. By 2013, his companies were already in financial trouble. Batista had charmed many investors to get involved in complicated and expensive infrastructure, mining and oil projects. But the oil wells he had bought were not producing enough barrels. Construction projects were delayed, and expected returns turned into financial losses. He sold his companies, his yacht, and much of his real estate in Rio de Janeiro and vowed to save his companies. Once the bluest chip on the Sao Paulo Bourse worth $35 billion in 2011, OGX is trading at a few cents a share. His mining, logistics, and energy companies have been taken over by foreign investors. The net value of the entire cluster of Batista's businesses, each branded with a letter X, a symbol for the multiplication of wealth, has turned to dust. Minority stakeholders, who eagerly hitched their wagons to Eike's rising star, are scrambling to court to recover their crumbling investments. The policy whizzes in Brasilia who reveled in the new national business icon are mulling over how to retrieve the $2.9 billion they loaned to Batista at sweetheart rates through the publicly subsidized development bank. Reporters are no longer invited to helicopter out to the future site of his superport. Batista's patented pink tie and Cheshire cat smile no longer light up the Rio night. His Twitter feed has gone silent. But his empire was built with something more sinister than just hard work and courage, according to investigators. In 2017, Operation Car Wash, a wide investigation that revealed corruption in all major Brazilian political parties, revealed that Eike Batista used his connections with officials in Rio de Janeiro state to obtain public contracts. A judge issued an arrest warrant while Batista was in New York. There was speculation that he might flee, but Batista booked himself a first-class flight to Rio de Janeiro, where he gave himself up. Businessman Eike Batista arrives at Instituto Médico Legal for exams after being arrested at International Airport Galileo on January 30th, 2017. Even in New York's airport, fellow Brazilians showed support and admiration and asked for selfies with the disgraced tycoon. Within hours, he was in a prison cell with other common criminals, with only a squat toilet and cold water. Not having completed college, he did not have a right to a private cell. He remains the second only top 10 Forbes billionaire to be arrested, after drug trafficker Pablo Escobar. Batista's time in prison lasted only a few months, and he was released to serve house arrest while awaiting trial. This week, a judge sentenced him to 30 years in jail for allegedly paying $16.5 million to former Rio de Janeiro Governor Sergio Cabral, whose combined prison sentences for corruption add up to 123 years in jail. His crimes caused deep scars in the trust of investors and entrepreneurs who, in the recent past, saw Brazil as a good investment option. Read the prison sentence given by Judge Marcelo Bretas in a criminal court in Rio. Batista, whose legal team said he would appeal, was found guilty of paying a $16.5 million bribe to former Rio Governor Sergio Cabral, who also was found guilty in the case. Batista's companies won state contracts in exchange for the bribe, including one awarding his consortium the rights to run Brazil's Temple of Soccer, the Maracanã in Rio, the stadium where the 2014 World Cup final was played and the 2016 Olympic Games opening and closing ceremonies were held. The bribes were also linked to the construction of the $3.7 billion ACU port facility, controlled since 2013 by Prumo Logistica, which is majority owned by U.S.-based EIG Energy Partners. Prosecutors said Batista paid a quarter of the bribes to Cabral in cash and the rest in shares of state-led oil company Petroleo Brasilio S.A. Minor Vale SA, and drinks company Ambev SA, a unit of Anheuser-Busch InBev NV. Batista was last year fined 21 million reais, $5.4 million for trading shares based on insider information about shipbuilding company OSX Brazil. Just a few years ago, Batista had been hailed by then Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff as a standard, a national pride amongst Brazilian capitalists. Eike Batista has been trying to reinvent himself as a YouTuber with business tips on commodities and infrastructure. But this week's conviction will most likely be the end of the road for a man who once embodied a national dream of wealth and prosperity. Meanwhile, Brazil itself is struggling to find a new path to growth. The country boomed during a golden global era of commodities, but failed in its task of reforming its economy. But Operation Car Wash shows one part of the system is slowly being reformed. Authorities are tackling corporate corruption. They want to build a system that allows bold and innovative entrepreneurs to flourish. The eccentric former billionaire's meteoric rise and fall mirrored the recent fortunes of Brazil, where the commodities boom faded as his energy, mineral, and logistics empire fell apart earlier this decade. His attitude and confident forecast of a prolonged golden era for Brazil evaporated just as Latin America's largest economy suffered its worst recession on record. 6 years ago, 61-year-old Batista had a net worth exceeding $30 billion and ranked among the world's 10 richest people, according to Forbes magazine. And he had declared he would soon top the list. He sat atop EBX, then one of the world's most expensive industrial conglomerates, with units ranging from oil and shipping to entertainment and beauty care. However, Batista made massive bets on offshore oil plays that did not pan out, and the extension of a commodity boom that fizzled as he inflated investors' hopes. What do you think about the journey of Eike Batista? Do you think that Eike can make a comeback and return to $35 billion? Let me know in the comments. If you're new to this video, make sure to like, share, and hit the bell icon for more interesting videos.